It is generally said in leftist circles that the real battle for civilization now in the modern world today is not between socialism and liberalism, but rather between socialism and fascism. That as material conditions progress, as the world we live in runs closer and closer to the razor's edge, the real battle, the true battle, emerges once more. That liberalism is a temporary stopgap, a placation, an imposition of civility over an otherwise irreconcilable conflict. And unfortunately, I think that conflict is fast approaching. Ever since Donald Trump's election, there have been people claiming that concerns as to his fascist nature are overblown. And the reason for this is in large part because when they imagine fascists, they imagine cold steel and jack boots. They imagine discipline and hard work. They imagine a terrifying facade of state power. When in reality, fascism is and always has been emasculated, sexless young men desperately propping up something to ease their feeling of emasculation. Fascism has never been a bulwark of strength. It is the union of weakness that gives it its social power. And it has a great deal of social power when men feel emasculated. Today, in modern America, there are many men who feel this way. There are many white people who feel their social standing is threatened. There are many wealthy people who fear correctly that the grip of socialism is beginning to ring tight round their neck, and all the conditions for a fascist uprising are well in place, which means that Donald Trump's personal, moral, intellectual, and character failings are utterly irrelevant when it comes to that fundamental question: is Donald Trump a fascist? It's a question I've answered a dozen times over the course of this stream, but I submit to you, what are we at now? Evidence X? Please.
Win, lose, or draw in this election, will you commit here today for a peaceful transferal of power after the election? And there has been rioting in Louisville. There's been rioting in many cities across this country, red and your so-called red and blue states. Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control. You know it. And you know who knows it better than anybody else? The Democrats know it better than anybody else. Go ahead.
Mr. President, the second question is, will you...
Please go ahead.
Get rid of the ballots, and there won't be a peaceful transition of power. There won't be a transition of power. There will be a continuation of power. Donald Trump and other prominent members of his administration are announcing to us that they intend to commit a coup in the United States. This isn't a fancy, frivolous use of language. This is a capital C coup d'etat, a traditional seizure of government power by one group against the democratic wishes of the majority. And here is how they are going to do it. I'm going to explain this to you, and I am going to be right. A lot of what I'm going to say now is going to be informed by an Atlantic article, which is entitled "The Election That Could Break America." Though, I admit, I'll take credit for this, this is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while now. Now, first of all, we must acknowledge this fact. Coups are, if you're going to be obnoxious with the gifts, there, no alerts, eat shit. Coups are, ultimately, decided by the military. There is no other group which is actually capable of securing a transition of power from one group to another in a non-peaceful context. Coups only happen when the military allows them to. When the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, if there's a coup in this country, it is because they have allowed it to take place. There is no force on earth that can prevent the United States military from securing the political power within this country. Thankfully, there is absolutely no reason to believe that Donald Trump is well liked by the Pentagon. I don't think the military is going to back Donald Trump in the case of an open and brazen coup. Should Joe Biden win the election, should he secure a majority of the Electoral College votes, I think that Joe Biden will be the president of the United States of America. So the Donald Trump administration is going to make sure Joe Biden does not win the upcoming election. They have been broadcasting their intentions now for quite some time, and it is clear to me now that they are committed to the following plan. Donald Trump has been besmirching the reliability of mail-in votes for a while now. Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died. There's no reason to believe they're not going to be able to get a Supreme Court appointment in there very, very quickly. You remember Bush v. Gore back in 2000? When recounts were stopped on account of the Supreme Court and the rightful president was ousted in favor of Bush? I know a lot of you are young. We're about to see a constitutional crisis that'll make that look like child's play. Here's what's going to happen. A significant proportion of votes that come in on November 3rd and prior are going to be mail-in ballots. Those mail-in ballots will be predominantly Democratic votes for a number of reasons. The largest one being that Democrats fear COVID-19 more than Republicans do, for a number of reasons largely influenced by Republican media and propaganda. Donald Trump and his administration have been besmirching the legitimacy of mail-in ballots for months now. In addition, Donald Trump's appointment to the United States Postal Service, along with the meddling of prominent Trump officials in the functionality of that office, have led to a significant decrease in the functionality of the USPS, such to the extent that when asked why he would not be approving Democratic efforts to give money to the USPS, Donald Trump said, they don't have the money to do mail-in ballots, so I guess they can't do it. That's an actual quote. You can go look that up. The Postal Service is going to be increasingly incapable of handling mail-in ballots. Some are going to be lost in the mail. Some of them are going to be deliberately destroyed by local officials who are keen with the Trump administration, probably in return for potential political favors down the line. Many of the mail-in ballots that come in, if they actually make it in, are not actually going to be counted on November 3rd. There's been a lot of talk amongst Republicans, on whether or not they will be adhering to a peaceful transition of power following the Trump comments that we just saw. And you know what they've been saying? Whoever wins on November 3rd will be the president. Well, that's the problem. Not all the votes come in on November 3rd. That's the issue. Some of you may remember back in 2018, there was a local race in the state of Florida, a very close one, between a Republican and a Democratic candidate. The Republican candidate was winning based off initial vote tallies, but a torrent of mail-in votes, absentee votes, and what have you, which came in after the first day of vote counting, started to favor the Democratic candidate. Trump took to Twitter. Trump said that the additional deluge of votes were illegitimate, that this was evidence of electoral fraud, and that the vote count must be stopped immediately so as to preserve the rightful transition of power from the previous official to the Republican one. And what was at that time a frivolous and unfounded accusation of fraud is now his re-election strategy. This is what is going to happen. Votes will be lost, and after November 3rd, every single alteration to the initial vote count that is decided based largely on in-person voting is going to be questioned and scrutinized by Trump and by Republican media. They will take it as evidence of fraud. They will take it as evidence of corruption. They will say that the Democrats have bought mail-in ballots from China that they used to file out the voting info of dead people and pets that they then delivered to sanctuary cities who then used illegal aliens to run the ballots over to the post box. They'll say anything. And the likely outcome of this, in my opinion, is that Donald Trump is going to lose this election terribly, and then he's going to win it. I do not have much faith in the Democratic establishment to mount a significant resistance to Trump's behavior. And without having any kind of meaningful presence in the Senate or in the Supreme Court, our ability to directly and legally challenge this is limited. And the only thing that I have to say to that is, talk to your coworkers about unionizing, buy guns, join the SRA, protect your identities, protest. It is at this point, and these are all, of course, people joke about liberals saying, just vote. Well, to be honest with you, lefties saying, go protest, buy a gun, is exactly the same, The outcome of this is nearly identical. It's just like, hey, don't just vote, just buy. It's like, okay, well, it's a platitude either way. What if we don't have the resources to? There are a lot of ways that this can go down in 5 weeks. And most of them aren't good. People have been saying it can happen here for a long time now, and they were always right. But I think we might be blessed to be the generation to see whether or not this country falls. I know there are a lot of 14-year-old lefties online who think that this is the advent of accelerationism. I would encourage them to look throughout history and find a single example, just one, of lefty revolutionaries flourishing in a fascist government. Just one. Find one throughout history for me. How well does that work, historically? You can look. I know I have. It doesn't. It turns out, and this is why all the original theorists wrote on this, it's actually important to maintain bourgeois democracy as your enemy in the fight for socialism, because we are far more capable of winning over a population which is gripped by the stifling enemy of liberalism than we are resisting fascism. Now, I know that this is a fairly doomer segment, and that's just that's because it is. There's nothing that I can really do about it to change the tone of the information. Yeah, you should vote in person when you can. I plan on talking about that soon. We'll be getting into actual voting strategies soon. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that it is important to vote for Joe Biden, if not for the whole preventing our collapse into fascism thing. It's also because the larger a margin Joe Biden wins by, the easier it will be to defend claims that Donald Trump's attempt at a coup is just that. This is why people should vote for Biden, even in deeply blue and red states, because it secures a public mandate that'll make it far easier to defend any action taken against Trump, if that makes sense. Anyway, that is what is going to happen in 5 weeks. Things may actually end up being worse than I imagine them to be, but we'll have to see how that goes down. So I hope you all are ready.